but I also am of the belief that healthcare at this stage in the human game, with the amount of technology, the amount of resources, and so on and so forth that we have, healthcare can and should be a human right.
Look how excited we just got having that conversation away from something that we don't necessarily see complete eye to eye with. But when we go to jiu-jitsu, it's like there's similarities, right? We're not, just because you're doing music, I sell freaking insurance and whatever it is, wherever you live, there's a similarity in all of us. There's difference in all of us. And that's what's great about being human.
Yeah, 100%.
If we could just, like, I love that you're different. I love that you have different opinions. Like I do. And I just don't think enough people share that, dude.
If you don't like handle it the correct way, like that pride ego will be your downfall.
Oh, 100%.
1,000%. And I think, honestly,
100%.
I think that's what it's doing to Christian conservatism today as a whole. I think pride's what's absolutely killing it.
Would you agree with this, that morals are best learned through really experience?
My soul is breaking free. You awaken me. Stolen my time to move on, but now I can see seizing destiny. Welcome to my evolution.
I mean, welcome back to the dumbest guy in the room. Here today, my co-host Eddie, and we have a special guest here, man. I'm gonna let you introduce yourself, dude. Tell them you better than anybody else. So go ahead and introduce yourself to the listeners.
Yeah, what's up, everybody? My name's Dave. I am a musician by trade. My band's By the Moon. I do the vocals in there, write guitar, do a lot of the songwriting with my buddies Andrew and Steve. We also run a music production studio together called Cellarway Productions. You can find us just about anywhere. The Spotify, iTunes, you name it, we're everywhere. We distribute through any and everything. So check us out. You ever need stuff recorded, hit me up.
How long you been doing that, dude?
So we officially got LLC'd last year, but I've been recording music for, I want to say, intermediate professionally for the past like 2-3 years. My buddies that I work with are geniuses, so I kind of follow in their footsteps and listen to them, take their advice. So they've been doing it a few years longer than I have.
That's awesome, dude. Me and Eddie will, say the same thing. Dude, love music. I am not gifted whatsoever in that field, but I love listening to all genres of music. And I did listen to some of your songs. By the Moon, you had the one with you in your underwear, I think, dude, sitting on a big chair.
Yeah. Doll Face. That was like our first single. So we wanted to go out. We grew up in the Blink generation, so we were like, let's keep it fun. Let's keep it like
kind of what it sounded like, actually.
That's awesome.
Now that I think about it, it wasn't very Blink 182-ish.
Yeah, Blink, A Day to Remember, like with the guitars are a little bit more like chunky versus Blink, so we like that. It's just we grew up in the Warped Tour era.
That's it, man. Do what you love. But today, man, I brought you on, and I definitely want to have you on again to get more into the music industry and go into detail about that. But I brought you on today, dude, with everything going on. We have a very sensitive, emotional topic that, if you go on any social media platform right now, you can see the reactions, and they're very emotional. So it's a very strong topic with the RoeVWade decision that was made by the Supreme Court. And I seen that you had a post. It was very, thought out, very, open with your opinion. So I just wanted to bring you on to get kind of dig more into that, see why you feel that way, and just kind of get your opinion on the RoeVWade, dude.
Yeah, certainly. So right out of the gate, I should just say I'm pro-choice. I think that's super important. As mentioned to you previously, I have a background in biology, so I'm not any stranger to when life begins, but I believe to take the right of abortion away from women, there's a lot that comes with that. There's a lot of things that people don't think about because people tend to be reactionary. They don't tend to actually think it through and critically think. And that's, I think, one of the biggest problems in, this political, social climate that we find ourselves in. there's no room for nuance. There's no room for people to like go, you know, it's not just, you're not just murdering something. Like there's multiple people involved, like quote unquote people, you know, and there's just so many poorly worded arguments that I personally get frustrated. I consider myself a true independent. I don't consider myself like a liberal, a conservative, a centrist, or a libertarian. Probably, you know, I think I said to you, when I was younger, in my late teens, early 20s, I would have considered myself libertarian because, you know, economically conservative and socially liberal, right? And that's kind of like their whole shtick. And, you know, as I grew up, I kind of seen libertarianism as like this fantasy. Like most conservatives will look at the left and go, they have this fantasy of utopia, and I kind of see the same thing with liberalism. It's great in theory, like on paper, but I don't see it ever working where, like, you know, no taxes, we all live individually and free. And I'm rambling, but I'm pro-choice.
No, yeah, and that makes sense, dude. And I'm with you. I think Eddie's the same, pro-choice. Now, I'm pro-choice, but I'm also, where you said like libertarian, I'm pro-small government too. So this topic is difficult for me because of being small government, right? So this basically, and I know you said it in you know, the post I'm talking about, but you said, you know, it's not about giving, it might not all be about giving power back to the states. And from my viewpoint, I prefer things to be made at a state level. And I think the reason why I always juggle back and forth is because of social media today. Social media makes it look like me and you are next door neighbors, right?
Yeah.
Like we're not actually in the same community though, physically. We're not around the same people. And I'm from Philadelphia. You're from Port Richmond, I believe, right? So you're from Philly.
Yep.
So like what you need in Philadelphia is not the same thing as like I moved down to South Carolina.
Mhm.
The people here have different needs, wants, likes, morals than everybody in Philadelphia. So the things that are working in that community in Philadelphia won't necessarily work here.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
If
You go on social media, me and you are next door neighbors, and it's like we need, like, it just puts everybody closer than we really are. We're not very community based anymore. It's more social media.
I would agree with a lot of that. And for like the small government portion and the needs and wants of individuals in different locations, that's definitely true. And I think there needs to be a line drawn, because as a United States, a United Nations, where there's 50 states all in a union together, there's certain things that we need to agree on that are totally like, this is what's on the table. These are your rights. And personally, I believe abortion should be federally legal, should be federally covered, because of the implications that if it's not, the rights that you're taking away from women in those states is ultimately more harmful than the good that it does. It does more harm than any good. And when you give states back power, there's a liberal left reaction when you go giving back power to the states. They'll automatically bring up slavery, because that's the reactionary position. They're like, that's what they said about slavery and the Civil War and yada yada yada. I think states' rights matters a lot more when you're talking about things maybe economically and fiscally and things like that, and how they handle like their housing commodification and things of that nature. But when we're talking about actual human rights that involve really deeply intimate and personal life choices, I don't know if that's necessarily better to give to more government hands, because I think you and I would agree that just because somebody's in a position of power does not make them wise, does not make them intelligent, and does not make them care at all about the people that are on the opposite side. Because, look at politics today. It is so polarized. You're on one team or the other. And if you're not on either team, whatever you say, the other side will conflate you with being on that team. So when I go, I'm pro-choice, there's instantly somebody going to go, you fucking libtard. You know what I mean? Like, I think states' rights do matter. I think it does matter, but I think there needs to be a line drawn when it becomes a federal issue. They're like, that federal body is supposed to protect all of our rights as a whole. You know what I mean?
I do. And I think that's why I struggle so hard with the abortion thing, because I just think the conversation with abortion needs to be opened up more with people that are pro-life, pro-choice, so that people can kind of figure out what that means for that person.
Yeah,
right. So like, I'm pro-choice, but morally I'm pro-life. Like my morals say pro-life. I don't agree with it. I think that I think that this conversation also might not even be taking place if it wasn't abused so much by women. What I mean by that is being used as birth control. And I just feel like the fact that is where it went quickly, rapidly, like there's been more abortions than there has been people that died in every war on this planet, which is absolutely insane to tell me that there's been that many like medical things and rapes. Like, I just don't see that being the case.
I always see that argument framed as abortion for convenience, but like, if you talk to these women, ask them what's convenient about having an abortion, and they'll go nothing. Like, what was convenient was the contraception, but that didn't work. Like, and every measure that they take prior, like, I mean, women are getting things shoved into their bodies, like IUDs, like physically stuff implanted in their arm to prevent pregnancies. And like, there's a thing that bothers me on the right too, that they're always against sex education because they're like, that grooms children. But the data really points towards, when kids have sex education, it prevents more unwanted pregnancies. I don't necessarily know if I believe that women are having abortions out of convenience and abusing it for contraception in replace of like condoms and IUDs. I don't know if that's necessarily true.
Do you think there's any responsibility on the woman themselves though, outside of that, and men? Because let me ask you this. So you have one kid and you said you had one on the way, right?
Yep.
And what if she came to you right now and just told you she got an abortion? How would you feel?
Emotionally, that would suck for me. And it's between obviously me and her, right? It's I have to.
No, I know that. And the reason I'm saying that, dude, this is the first time I've ever said this publicly. My mom doesn't even notice, dude. I'm about to say it on this podcast. When I was a kid, dude, I got a girl pregnant in 8th grade. 8th grade. And I found 13, out,
right? Around that time.
I found out through the nun that she got an abortion. I'm not kidding. Like, it never even got to me that she was pregnant, nothing. The nun had to come to me and tell me that.
That's heavy.
Dude, I can't sleep at night. Still to this day.
I believe that.
I had no say, no nothing. Now, I could go back in time and say I would have said I kept it. I could say a million different things, right? It probably still would have happened. I probably still would agree with it out of fear, out of the judgment from my parents. I can't even believe I just said that, dude. I'm gonna my mom is gonna freak. But with that being said, like, I could not. I still to this day, dude. Like, I'm 6 years sober now. The first time that I actually said this out loud was at an AA meeting, and it relieved so much of the things that were haunting me that it's unbelievable. Like, I didn't know, like, it was suppressed in my mind that was bothering me for so long. Yeah. So like, I also have this feeling that people want to justify it, that have had it, to make themselves feel better as well, to make yourself feel like it wasn't something that was bad. Yourself, because if everybody agrees that, look at war, a soldier that goes over and kills somebody from Afghanistan, they kill them. They don't speak the same language. He doesn't look human, but the dude has PTSD from killing all those people. But the world keeps telling him it's okay, it's justified, it's good. So he can keep moving on and justify it that way. But at the end of the day, you did kill somebody, right? And that's where PTSD comes in, because you're not accepting the fact that we're all kind of evil, and that was evil, and that dude was doing the same thing you were doing for his people. Yeah. So do you think that has anything, like, because I know women that have had multiple multiple, and continue to want it. And they're the ones screaming the most on Facebook.
Personally, I commend you for saying that out loud. That's a very deeply intimate and personal thing. And I will say there is 2 people involved, and I would love to know if you know how she felt, because she experienced this. She was part of that experience as well. And I'm sure it wasn't like roses and flowers for her, but you know what I mean? It's shitty for both parties, right? It's not fun for both parties. And that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, there's no convenience in abortion. It's not done out of convenience. It's done out of the need to survive generally. And if you actually look at a lot of the data too, most people that have an abortion, I think it's over 60%, already have multiple children.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And, you know, I know, you know, feeding babies, it's expensive, man. And bringing, it's a convoluted debate, right? It's not something like, is this, it's more than moral. It's a convoluted thing, and it's so intimate. And I just don't believe that a government has any say in what you do with it, what you do with that right. And I don't believe, if there's women out there, I don't know any of them that are using it like, I got my 3rd abortion this year. The Q4 is coming next month. Like, you know what I mean? So I think a lot of these times for everybody involved, it's a traumatic experience. It's shared between you, the loved one or non-loved one, the one night stand, and the doctor. And, you know, the man overall, I don't take as much responsibility. Like, when I was watching my girl be pregnant, one of the things that I constantly thought was, I'll never have this experience of growing a human inside of me ever. Like, it's so hard for me to put myself in her shoes in those moments, because, like, what the fuck is that like? What is it like to grow a whole fucking person? How the hormones change. Like, you know, love's just a chemical, as people love to say. Those chemicals within her change more rapidly than they do in a man. You know what I mean? And that's why I struggle so much with the idea of abortion for convenience. I just really find that to be one of the shittiest arguments. I find the heartbeat argument to be terrible. That's like the most worthless argument there is. Simply because we have people walking around alive today whose heartbeat doesn't work on their own. They need a pacemaker. Are they dead? Are they dead according to your logic? No, right? It would be such a better stance to take the development of your nervous system, because that's when you begin to feel, not necessarily think, because if you go down that rabbit hole, then you have to start talking about like human sentience. When does the consciousness form? Because that's what we all agree makes us human, the representation of the quote unquote soul, right? Like you as an individual. So I just find a lot of the regurgitated talking points in the debates just absolutely useless. I think it's a lot of the times people are regurgitating shit smarter people than them have said, and they don't really know what they're talking about. And no, I'm not saying these guys are doing that at all. It's just a lot of the rhetoric I hear, and I go, how much have you really thought about this? You know what I mean?
I think about it from and it's a bias. I think we all have a bias, right? Certainly. I just think the point is to point the bias out so that people know kind of where you're coming from. So the reason I'm pro-choice, like everything I'm saying right now, I'm still pro-choice. I do think, like, I think you can do whatever you want. I think the most important thing about this topic is the conversation. And what I mean by that is I hate when people are saying, you're male, you can't talk about this, or just any of that, because it affects everybody. And I'm also even though I'm pro-choice, I'm also pro-responsibility. So if you're out having sex strictly for pleasure all the time with different people, that's a consequence, right? Like, you should not be using abortion as a backup to that. I don't think that that's the case. Like, if I get Kristen pregnant or whatever, like I know that that's a possibility that I'm going to have to, that I have to take care of. So when I go back to my situation in 8th grade, I don't go back and look at it and blame her for doing it without asking me. That's not what I do. I go back to that situation and say, I shouldn't have been having sex at that age, not knowing what I was doing. And I should learn from that and not repeat that over and over and over again. So I look at situations and say, what part did I play in this that I could have changed to make different results? So I'm not going back and saying that I think that women are whatever because they do it without asking the man, or the man should be asked. I think the man needs to take responsibility as well and say, well, I shouldn't have been having sex with that woman that wasn't ready to have kids yet, or wasn't ready to settle down, or wasn't ready to start a relationship. I just think that we look at sex because we are very free. Like you look at around the world, dude, like I think Qatar, they're having the World Cup, I believe, in Qatar.
I believe so, yeah.
So.
Dude, they just put out a thing that's if you get caught having a one-night stand, that's 7 years in prison.
Yeah,
like think about that for a second.
Yeah, that's
right?
that's tyranny. Like that's authoritarian. That's fascism. You know, and
it's scary. But then look at what we got. It's not even close to as big. Just like you said, utopias. So if everything went the liberal way, utopia for liberals. Everything goes the conservative way, utopia for conservatives. But guess what? It's an authoritarian government either side. So how do you know which side that you're on? If you join one of them sides, how do you know you're not the evil one? How did Germans know? Like, why did Germans join Hitler? Did they think they were evil joining that? Or did they think they were the good guys?
Have you ever seen any of the footage of German soldiers post-war being shown some of the atrocities of like and you see the reactions are like, oh shit,
they didn't know
like in tears and stuff like that. And I think as the goal of utopia, right, as technology moves further and further, we can get closer and closer to that for sure. The goal of utopia is what America's founded on. It's founded on the ideas of freedom and liberty. And of course, with freedom and liberty comes responsibilities. Like, you know, that's why when we talk about 2A and you know, gun rights, we say responsible gun ownership. We're talking about being responsible for those things. How do we make America more responsible when they have this freedom? And I agree that is important, and it's part of the culture. You know, with Tinder and everything, it's hookup culture and stuff like that. Qatar limiting how many times you're allowed to have sex is absolutely fucking tyrannical and insane. And there is accountability for sure, but you know, you take the risk of getting smoked by a car every time you cross the street, and if you get smoked by a car, it's not necessarily your fault. If, you know, you check both ways, you waited for the light to turn green and, you know, something happens and somebody blows that light and you get smoked by the car, you're not responsible for it. You know, it happens. So if you're having sex, you're using a condom, you're getting, you know, girl's got the IUD in, she's got the implant in her arm and so on and so forth, and she still gets pregnant. That's what abortion's partially for. It's for, you know, those moments where I got smoked by the car, even after taking all of those necessary precautions. But you know, I do agree that there's some sort of personal responsibility.
We don't talk about that. Like, it's not talked about at all. If you bring that up, you're just like.
I think it goes back to like how you said, like the sex education, because I mean, I'm 32. I 12 years of school. I don't think they didn't do sex education when I was going through school. I mean, I went to a Catholic school, so I'm not like completely surprised. Right. But like, there was zero sex education. You had to either figure it out on your own, or if you had like type of parents that would talk to you about sex and sex education, then like that was the only form of like education you were getting.
Yeah, and it's such a thing, like you said, there's so much responsibility when having sex, and to not be educated and fly into that blind of, you know, how it works and how it's going to happen. Like, you know, by the time you're like 11, you can go, 2 people have sex and a baby's made, but it's so much more than that, right? Like, you know, they're like, pulling out definitely works, right? Pulling out is like the way to go. So I really think it equates back to that. But then you have pushback from the Christian conservatives going, They're grooming children by teaching them about sex. They're grooming them. They should never learn about sex in school. It should be up to the parents. Partially, I agree with that, but I also agree with, I mean, if you meet any teacher, they love the students that they teach. Almost every teacher I've ever met, not all of my teachers, some of my old teachers, you know, the older generations were like there for a fucking paycheck. They didn't give a fuck about us. They were just there. But like, you see these younger generations, nobody today is getting into teaching for the fucking money at all. There's no fucking money in teaching. We don't give a fuck about teachers, but they're like second parents. You know, your kids are spending 8 hours a day, 5 days a week with these people. They grow to love these kids, even the troubled ones. You know what I mean? Like, these are special fucking humans. Most of them. There's definitely outliers. There's definitely exceptions, and you'll see the mainstream media focus on those. You know what I mean? Like, they'll go, they're bringing drag queens in to read books. I don't even see what the fucking problem with drag queens reading books is. I've seen other things going on with that whole fucking argument right now, which is insane to me. It's insane that they're like, the LGBTQ community is grooming kids, the schools are grooming kids. They're trying to create enemies, in my eyes, out of people that aren't enemies, just to win debates. You know what I mean? It's not the desire to win or the desire to be right does not equate to the desire for truth. And I think that's one of the biggest fucking problems when we have any of these talks nowadays. It's always, they just want to be right. Doesn't matter how many lies are told, just want to be right. You know what I mean? So it's just a fucking well. When you touch the, abortion, you end up going down to contraception. Then you start talking about the LGBT community because their rights are hindered upon the 14th Amendment, which was part of Roe v. Wade. It's you know, quote unquote slippery fucking slope.
The Roe v. Wade with the LGBTQ community, I do have a question there, because what I was nervous about with Roe v. Wade was right to privacy, and I started to read into Dobbs, the ruling that overturned it, and in there it specifically says it's only abortion, has nothing to do with Roe v. Wade. I mean, nothing to do with right to privacy. Every other precedent remains, and so I don't see where the LGBTQ community is affected by this for future rulings. So what specifically do you know about the ruling that like hinders something later for LGBTQ community?
I was under the impression that it also had to do with the 14th Amendment, that and contraception. I'm not a constitutional lawyer.
Don't get me wrong. Wait. Future me here, and what past me here is about to say is wrong. So I rushed back here, but just go ahead, listen, and I'll be right back. What else do you expect from the dumbest guy in the room? Roe v. Wade does. What they overturned in Roe v. Wade was specifically giving abortion, giving the right for states to make the decision on abortion. And it says that like specifically, and it also like states are, I don't know how it's worded in Dobbs. I didn't get that far, but they did say that the exclusions for health risks for the mother are meant are. So that was rough to listen to. Now, I should say, but rough to reflect on there. But what do you expect from the dumbest guy in the room? That's why it's called the dumbest guy in the room, because having a conversation is difficult, and I am wrong a lot. But this time I thought it was important for me to come back from the future to explain why I'm wrong, just in case somebody out there hears it and thinks that that's the truth. It is not the truth. It is wrong. And typically in my podcast, I try to speak from more of a philosophical perspective, point of view. I don't try to prove that other people are wrong using statistics and things like that. That's just not what I like to do. So let me explain here. I was wrong, right? I was wrong because I've been reading a lot about the Roe v. Wade and what happens when you're constantly reading things and seeing things. You can kind of deceive yourself into seeing what the actual truth is. So what it looks like I did here was I took a bunch of information that I read and I misinterpreted and I piled it all together, made it really clunky. and it was just wrong. It was very wrong. So what it looks like I meant to say or what I mean to say in this would be that no state has completely banned abortion, and every state thus far, or up until this point, and still up to today, no state has completely banned abortion without giving medical exemptions. So with that being said, I apologize for that misinformation here. And if you could just show that you do forgive me, because we are human, we all make mistakes. It's not my job to tell you when you're wrong. It's my responsibility to tell me when I'm wrong. So if you forgive me, please just hit the subscribe button here, and you'll get to see me fuck up a lot more later. All right, get back to listening to this idiot. Supposed to stay across the board as well.
So that's a good point, because you'll see a lot of people go, well, there's going to be exceptions to save the life of the mother. This is where the critical and deep thought comes in, right? Because yes, that may be true, but now how much fucking red tape's there, right? How many doctors are going to go, this is a very gray case. There's problems with the life of the mother, but also problems with the life of the baby. I could lose my fucking license if a medical malpractice by the state goes, I want to try you on this as a fucking malpractice, and they lose their license. How many doctors are going to go, I don't want to handle this case. I'm not going to save the life of this mother, because it's going to be hard for me to choose, what I'm supposed to do and what's correct, because the state's now making it harder. It's making me jump through this red tape. That to me is not pro-life. That is just control. That's giving states access to your medical history, to women's medical history, I should say, because that's what it comes down to. It has to do with, are the states now allowed to look at your medical history? Fuck that. Fuck, just absolutely fuck that. That's why we have HIPAA, with the Nuremberg Code, things like this. This is why it's so important, that right to privacy. You know what I mean? And where does this lead to? Where does this end? You know what I mean?
So like the red tape that you're talking about. So like my wife's an ER nurse, and she sent me this the other day that she, I guess, seen on Instagram or something from another nurse. And pretty much this lady had a atopical pregnancy, and you pretty much need to have an abortion at that point. So right. The doctor, so basically they sat on her until the doctor could speak with a lawyer. And meanwhile, the atopic pregnancy ruptured, and she
bleeding internally, right?
So they did not get her procedure done for another 9 hours, because the doctor was working with the lawyer for so long trying to work around the laws and not lose his license. By the time she had her procedure, she had over 600 cc's of blood in her abdomen. She almost died. And so like that's the things that are happening now because of this.
That's the reality. It's very nice and convenient for people to say, I'm pro-life, I'm protecting the unborn. There's an active life involved in this already. They'll always bring up the talking point of 60 million babies. Those were 60 million women involved in those cases. You know what I mean? It's just very convenient to argue from that standpoint. And like, that's what's been a week since RoeVWade. Imagine in 5 years how many times that's going to happen. How many current mothers with children that are alive today are going to die because of this? I mean, abortion's not going to end. I mean, you look at the data, and women are still going to have abortions. Women are going to be throwing themselves down the stairs. That elementary school joke of, I'm going to get the coat hanger. That's going to happen. And the people that are pro-life don't think about that. And if they do, they don't care. They don't care that that's going to happen, because they go, it's your responsibility. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And that only goes so far, especially when you talk about how shitty the fucking economy is right now, right? Like, that's scary for people. People are losing their houses. They're not able to buy houses. They're not able to fucking afford rent, food, everything that they need for themselves. And then to bring a child into that, have you ever seen Snowpiercer with they're on that train driving through the earth and it's frozen.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
You know, at the
In a
back of the
movie?
train when they're all
Yeah.
fucking eating each other because they're
Yeah.
the poor people.
Yeah.
It's such a good movie. It's such a good movie on perspective. And of that perspective, it's the point of where we're getting to. You know, it's really easy to sit at the top in fucking suits and go pull yourself up by your fucking bootstraps until you're down here in the mud with us. You know what I mean? So
I get it. The other thing, the reason why I believe that it could be at a state level too is what about, so like South Carolina, you've been here now for how long?
A little over 2 weeks.
The people here, man, it's very, very, very Christian here, right? And I'm not Christian. I don't have a religion. I don't put myself in really any box. I think putting yourself in a box opens you up to manipulation. It opens you up to a lot of different things. Just
It
like you
limits
said,
you.
if you say it does. And it also lets people judge you based on what they view as a Christian or what they view as a liberal or conservative. It's like you say I'm conservative, you already have this whole picture of what I am. And I don't agree
this
with that.
caricature.
Yeah, so I don't put myself in any of the boxes, but I would say that 80% of the people here would not want their tax dollars going paying for an abortion. Where in PA, it's probably opposite, or
Right.
New York or California. So for the federal government to come in and say this is where your tax dollars have to go, to a group of a whole state that says no, I don't want my tax dollars there, I want it here. Right?
Mhm.
Where, like, what's wrong with that? If you're in a community, right? Because that's what taxes are for, the community.
Yep.
Correct. So the
Yeah.
community should decide where those tax dollars go. Correct.
I would agree. Yeah.
So if most of your state is saying this is what I want my tax dollars to go to, shouldn't that, like, when you're looking at it from a federal, and America's a republic. Right. So we're all technically, each state is like its own country under the Constitution. We're a constitutional republic.
Mhm.
So with that being said, if it makes it easier, if I don't agree now with South Carolina and I'm like, no, I'm pro-choice all the way through. I think abortion should be legal across the board up to the last day they deliver that baby. I can go and move one state above me and and now I align with all of that, which is going to create a better community. Right, because now I'm with more people that agree with me.
Right.
Does that
So-
make I think it's gonna right now. I don't think it is great because there's a lot of people living places where they're not going to agree. But over time, when you're looking at from a time standpoint, more people are going to move into areas where they more align, which will create better communities.
It's like I talked to my wife about that, had this conversation, and she said the only issue with that is the people that aren't able to move. They're not financially able to move to a different state that more aligns with them. Like they're stuck in their pocket of poverty, I guess you could say. And like they're just like they might get government assistance and funding to support their family or whatever, but like they don't have enough money to be able to move to a state that does align better with their views.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, because that's exactly what I was going to say. It's, you know, you look at the housing market today, and it's corporations and the well-to-do already buying up houses, putting a surcharge on it because it's my property. You know, you have to pay extra to live here. Money ain't worth shit nowadays anyway. So I know people fucking hate this word, but it's a quote unquote privileged stance to you think that way, because if you got you could think that way if you got the money to move at any time, but for a lot of people, that's not the case today. And why should people in a constitutional republic, in the same way, because I agree, you know, I recognize that's what it is. I still believe that federally it should be legal. I can agree with the tax dollar portion, right? But I also am of the belief that healthcare at this stage in the human game, with the amount of technology, the amount of resources, and so on and so forth that we have, healthcare can and should be a human right. We should be able to provide that to everybody. Other countries have done it, and we just go, well, we're not them. Well, why not? They're doing it better than us. We're supposed to be the greatest fucking nation in the world. We should be doing it too. And we should be doing it fucking better. We should be doing it so much better. When I was going to school to be a doctor, there was a shortage coming. I think by 2030, we're supposed to be at a loss of about 100,000 doctors because people can't afford to go to med school. All the red tape to get through, to do all the shit is so fucking hard. And that's going to fuck us. It's destroying our infrastructure. Our people are our infrastructure. And by not taking care of our people, even at the lowest rung of the ladder, we're fucking ourselves in the long run. But I agree. Taxation without representation is bullshit. And I see that a lot in PA. They fucking charge me $3.29 for a goddamn Pepsi. I go anywhere else, that's $1.29. And I agree. Where's my tax dollars going? I got fucking, we're notoriously known for fucking potholes, right? Where's my tax dollars going? So I agree with that. But I also adhere to the belief that our tax dollars should go to healthcare. I think that's a thing that we should all invest in. It's the community, man. We should all be healthy. We should all feel good. And that goes for mental health too.
I think they should also like lower the insurance that the doctors have to pay, because it's a ridiculous amount of money that they have to pay to cover them for like their license and stuff like that. Like, I think that's ridiculous.
You got these dudes that are all in suits that have never ever stepped inside of an OR making decisions for the hospital. These insurance fucking buffs, these businessmen that only care about the fucking bottom line. Where I think things like, and this is going to bring out the lefty in me, I think things like housing and healthcare are part of the natural infrastructure. Those are things people need to survive. We can provide those things. There's like 50 million vacant homes nowadays. We could figure out ways to get people stimulated to be able to afford those places to live. You know what I mean? And I'm not an expert in any of these things. These are things that I believe. I would love to, know people that could speak to how this could get done a little bit more. But at this stage in the game, with how far technology's come, with how interconnected we are as a people, I think these are rights that can be afforded to a first world nation that's supposed to be the greatest nation on earth. But, we're falling behind in education. We're falling behind on healthcare. We're leading in maternal mortality rate, to speak on abortion. We're in like the top 15 for like infant mortality rate. So when I hear people preach pro-life too, that's another thing that comes to my mind, where I'm going, this is very ironic when mothers and babies are dying every day in a first world country. So, but I do agree about the taxation and representation and things like that.
See, again, I don't think that that's where most people's minds are even going that are talking about this topic.
No, it's reactionary.
But I do think that nobody's able to really have a conversation. And like, why can't I say I'm morally pro-life and, pro-choice from a government standpoint? Because across the board, right? So I just think that there's so many hypocritical things. Just because I agree with something doesn't mean that's the only thing that I want mandated, right? Like,
I think most people would agree with you. I think most people, even that have abortions, aren't necessarily pro-abortion or anti-life. I think most people are pro-life, but they see that gray area. You know what I mean? Where it's like, am I going to be able to
share their pain, dude? Like there's pain that goes with it, and I know it firsthand stance. Like, there's pain, and the fact that everybody wants to I think we dehumanize it. Like, we are saying it's not life. This is life. At this point, it's life. At this point, it's not life. It's a clump of cells. It's the other side saying it's a baby.
We're a clump of cells. You know what I mean?
I'm a clump of cells, dude. Like, you are, we are, together we are. Like, that's all, the earth, that's all we are. To sit there and try to argue when life starts and ends, I think if we could just get on the same page of like, look, this is how it feels. This is real. Some people do, like, I look at serial killers, for example. They could take a life and they're the only ones smiling and have no remorse. And there's very little of those people on this planet. Most people, in my mind, I think are good people with good intentions. They just don't see that in everybody else, right? Like, most people do have good intentions, but when they look at the rest of the world that doesn't see the world the same way, it must automatically mean they have bad intentions or evil intentions. And I don't see the world that way. I see the world, because I was a terrible person, dude. Like, I was I cheated on, I was terrible, dude. Like I was a bad person. And I see the evil within myself. So the only evil I'm ever really trying to fight is within myself. And I think the best way to make the world a better place is to share that experience and to be honest with myself at the things I did and not blame it on other things and other people, and like take responsibility for all of it. Every single thing that I've ever done, I take responsibility for. Like you said, if I got hit by a car, if a car came through this wall right now and hit me, right, and I somehow managed to live, I would have said, man, I should have ended that podcast a half hour early. That's to the extent I take responsibility, because there's nothing else I could have changed about that besides the timing of this podcast or the site of the podcast, right? I can't change what that driver was doing. There's no way in my power to do that. I can't. It's impossible.
Right.
Right. I can't go back in time and move myself, but I can also take that experience and say, what the hell could I have done differently to make a better result?
Or you're going to go viral. So it's a win-win.
Yeah. Or it's definitely going to
get
go
Smith
viral.
doing a podcast.
It would definitely go viral. But you get where I'm coming with that. Like
Certainly, but
I think when I talk about responsibility, people are like, well, they can't help it. They can't do this. And I'm not saying they can. I'm saying if you take the responsibility for things, the only part of a situation that you could have controlled, your life will get better. Your life will 100% get better if you start
Absolutely.
taking responsibility.
I agree, but there's certain things too where it's like, how much did luck have a chance? And hindsight's always 20/20, right? Like, yeah, you could have moved, right? You could have ended the podcast 20 minutes earlier, but like that would have just been sheer luck, right? I mean,
100%. 100%.
And I don't know if I'd necessarily equate that with responsibility. It's shitty things happen. And like I said, hindsight's 20/20. Damn, I should have moved. I should have slid my seat up a little bit. But
yeah, but some other people would look at that situation and be like, and blame the driver. Like, I can't do that. I can't. I don't care what the driver was doing.
If he comes through your house, he was being irresponsible with his God-given rights. You know what I mean?
But if I hold on to that hate and that
I don't necessarily mean there needs to be hate towards that driver.
How many people would?
A lot, but it's also
your
like,
whole family, your everybody. They're going to be like, get him, get him, get him.
Yes.
I look at like, there's nobody that's going to beat that person up for what he did more than that person.
I agree.
In his mind, dude, when he lays his head down at night, he's going to be like, man, I've really hurt somebody. No matter what anybody thinks, you know, like when people see court cases and shit and they're like, that person's the evil one or whatever, that person's living with that pain. It's real. They know they're wrong. They know, but they have to, the real prison's here, bro. You can put me behind bars. You can do whatever you want. This is the prison. Everybody has it, right? There's regrets that you go to bed with at night and you're like, you beat yourself up for it, but we try to justify it. So the more the community agrees with things, the better off you. The more a community agrees with something that you agree with, that you are trying to justify, the better you can sleep at night. But it doesn't last long. You still have to live with it.
I think every mature adult should have this kind of quote unquote awakening where it's like, I'm on a journey of self-mastery, and the only one that can do that is me. And that's where that personal responsibility lies. And I've always been pretty smart, right? Like I've always done good at school. I've been articulate. I've been cordial. Like I've been very good at those things. And as a late teen in my early 20s, I was a fucking jerk off. I was a narcissist because I could out debate people, and I used to love doing political and philosophical commentary. Like I used to love talking about just like shit like this, and writing up on it and arguing with people on Facebook, and the devil's advocate stuff. And I had to take a look at myself in this journey of self mastery and go, am I a fucking asshole? Like, what good am I doing? Because I agree. I think most people want to do good. I think they want to use themselves for good, and I see that from the pro-life people. I see that from the pro-choice people. They're both trying to do good, right? They're both trying to defend somebody. And two things that was really important to me to help me overcome that like egotistical narcissism problem that I had was I had to be able to ask myself, am I wrong? And do I know enough to talk about a lot of this shit? And when I started doing that and asked me just those two simple questions, it was really hard for me to say I'm wrong. It was hard for me to do that with fights with my girl, like admitting when I was wrong. Because that's what it was. All I wanted to do was be right. I didn't care about truth. I cared about being right. And I mean, those are just two little things. And I agree. You know, the war is inside your head. So like, I have severe obsessive compulsive disorder. Like I have fucking rituals that I do, whether they're physical or mental. Like I have like a loop that I play over in my head, right? And it's really hard to like describe, but like if I don't do these things, you ever see Final Destination?
Yeah.
I can't watch that fucking movie because everything I do will equate in somebody's death. So that's the prison I live with every day. And it's led me to, you know, self-reflect a lot. I know it doesn't seem like it connects in any way, but I think about my thought process constantly because it's something that's constantly in my forethought. If I fucking don't do this, I'm going to kill somebody. Somebody's going to die because I didn't say these words in the exact order. And that's something that I've juggled with. And it led me to the idea of self-mastery. I keep that in the front now. I'm like, is this bettering me as a person and bettering the world? You know, you're the change you want to see in the world, right? I really, truly, honestly believe that. And that's kind of like one of my mantras that I just live by. Be the change you want to see in the world. Do unto others as you would have done unto you. I went to 20 years of Catholic school, and if I picked up anything, it was fucking that, man. I treat people with the same respect that I would want. And I think everybody should. I don't think, you know, religion's necessarily an evil or bad thing as much as people want to twist it into what it is today. I'm not religious either, but there's some really good things that came out of it, and understanding love, compassion, patience, and understanding what the 7 deadly sins are and how to avoid those. I believe in all that. You know what I mean? I think pride's a terrible thing.
I agree with you, dude. I do. And I like that you bring up, so this is really a controversial thing that people always get me for, is the pride. And if you look at my body, dude, I got the Eagles, Phillies, I got my old neighborhood, Parkwood.
Hell yeah.
This is all pride, dude. That's what this is. This was all pride. And what I mean, why I try to talk about that is because, like, if I'm at an Eagles game with a bunch of Eagles fans, I'm doing things that I necessarily wouldn't do if I was by myself. When I was in Parkwood, I was fighting kids from Somerton. I was fighting kids from Mayfair. I was fighting kids just because they were from a different neighborhood. And in my mind, I knew this probably isn't the right thing to do, but my pride made me do it. Yep. So for me, and that's why I say I don't join groups. I don't let groups define me. So I'm just against all of the pride movements. I'm against all of it. And it's not because I'm against that group. I think that you should be that. I think you should be you. Just don't let those things define you as a human being as a whole, right? Let it be part of you, and embrace that part of you. But I do, like, you'll do things that you wouldn't do by yourself. If you're with all those people that you agree with, you will.
Get 15-year-old boys together and you could get them to burn down a building. You know what I mean?
You can put any group together and all be shouting for the same thing.
Yeah.
And there's people in that group that are like, I don't know about this in their head, but outwardly they're doing the same thing as everybody else.
Most people want to believe in their heart of hearts that they're a leader, and it's just not the case.
Yes.
Leaders are outliers, and outliers are few and far between. There's a great book called Outliers. I highly recommend it both. I'll figure out who it is. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, send it to me.
They're few and far between, right? And it's a good point. But, you know, I think a portion of that is camaraderie. I think men inherently want the idea of a brotherhood fraternity. Like, I went to an all-boys school, and as a teen, I was like, I'm gonna fucking hate this. And looking back, I'm like, that shit was so important to me. Like, I do MMA, right? And being there, it's mostly men, and it's just a bunch of dudes trying to strangle each other just constantly. And I find that sense of brotherhood extremely comforting. And I think there is a danger in that. In certain ways. I don't know if I necessarily equate it when you look at like LGBT, like that pride, how they do the pride marches and shit like that, just because I definitely recognize those people as being downtrodden. They're looked down upon among a big portion of society as like they're lesser or you know, in some way. So for them to be able to get together and go, we have this camaraderie with one another, I think is important. I don't see them necessarily as like, we're going to burn down New York. Like, whereas, you know, Eagles fans, great fucking point, we'll win the fucking Super Bowl and then go
Burn the
march
city
City
down.
Hall and rip shit the fuck apart, man. You know what I mean?
I do, and I do think I think that that's important for that community to be able to get together, right?
Yeah.
I also think it's important for any community to be able to get together, but I also think it's important for that community to meet somewhere else where they're intertwined, when you're not all just with that one group, right? So like that's the importance of church and communities. Any religion, doesn't matter what it is, because you'll get somebody from the LGBTQ community, you'll get somebody from the Muslim, Christian, you'll get Buddhist, and then now you're sitting together at an Eagles game together, and you start to see, oh, we do have stuff and we believe in something similar too. But when you're constantly only with that one group,
the echo chamber,
that's where it gets bad. So I'm all for whatever marches you want to do for whatever group. It does not matter. But if you let it define you as a whole, you're never going to be able to find yourself.
Absolutely.
If I just march with, if I'm a gay man and I go with the LGBTQ community and that's all I do all the time, how am I supposed to actually find me? Right?
Yeah.
Like,
you're more than, you are absolutely more than
I'm
just
way
that.
more than being gay, right? I'm way more than being a lesbian. Like, you're more than that. That's not all you are.
Right.
You are, and I don't want to put you in that box. I want you to be Eddie Carroll.
Yeah,
right?
Personality is nuanced. You know, you're.
I want you to be you. I don't want you to have the same beliefs as just the people that are white, right? Like, I don't want you to have the same beliefs as just everybody that's black. But all of it is. It's like move or sit next to somebody with another interest that you have, and you'll find that they're part of another community and another community. And that's what and I just started jiu-jitsu about a month ago. And I fucking love it, dude. I love it.
I'll preach it up and down all day. I think it is so important for everybody to go do a free week of jiu-jitsu, because
it's the
it'll fucking change your life.
The most amazing thing. It's like all the stress is gone, right? It's the only time in my life. Like, I meditate, I do things like that. But my mind can still wander when I'm meditating, right? When I'm doing jiu-jitsu, it's like the only thing I can think about is not getting choked out by this little kid. You know, like this kid's so much smaller than me, and somehow this motherfucker just puts me in a triangle choke with his legs, and I'm sitting there like, how the hell did you do this? And it humbles you. It's like, damn, I'm really not that tough, and makes you look at other people a little differently. Yeah, that kid that just choked me out with his legs is not somebody I'd walk down the street saying that dude will kick my ass.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. I'm sure you've seen the enforcers, man. Like, where they have like that 135-pound brown belt who like, you get a big biker dude come in who's like, hey, throw me in, coach. Yeah. And he's like, all right, Bobby, roll with him. And he's just like doing whatever he wants to him. He's just fucking going with. It's
funny though that you brought it up, because I was watching your music video, I think yesterday. I think it was the one I was talking about. And in there you have this little sex doll like smack you, and you're sitting there like this. And I was like, he definitely practices, just by the way your hands were. I was like, he definitely does jiu-jitsu.
Hands always in, elbows in, baby. I never up here,
Even with a blow up doll.
Yeah, man. Always ready. Always ready.
It's just weird how those motions are though. Like, I recognize that in something like that. Like, dude, I was telling my wife yesterday, I get out of bed differently. Like, when I get out of bed, I like roll, like it's just so much cleaner. I just feel like my body, I don't know, it's weird.
Yeah, ground shark, man. You understand like your body's movement and stuff like that. I'm telling you, I could preach it. I will talk music all day, but like I will preach jujitsu like I'm part of the faith, man. How
long have you been doing it?
So I haven't gone in about a year since the pandemic. And I was doing it for about 2.5 years. I made it to blue belt under the Frank Ambrifi, and I don't know if you know who Phil and Ricardo Migliorese are, but they have their studio is called Balance, and they're kind of like all over the world. These guys are like, they were the dudes who started basically American jiu-jitsu in schools like across the globe. They're everywhere. You should check them out. Tons of great instructional stuff on Phil's Instagram. Great guys. Like I said, it's amazing, man, what they do.
The reason I brought that up, how long you did it, and look how excited we just got having that conversation away from something that we don't necessarily see complete eye to eye with. But when we go to jiu-jitsu, it's like there's similarities, right? We're not, just because you're doing music, I sell freaking insurance and whatever it is, wherever you live, there's a similarity in all of us. There's difference in all of us. And that's what's great about being human.
Yeah, 100%.
If we could just, like, I love that you're different. I love that you have different opinions. Like I do. And I just don't think enough people share that. Dude, it was so easy. Like, and I'll tell you how you said you were always online, like fighting with people, and you had this education background. And I used to do it constantly, bro, like constantly. And I got hooked on, people started to really start paying attention to what I was saying, which is a scary thing, right? Like looking back, I can all see
That's
it now,
power.
right? And people started to pay attention. I used to get messages and things, and I see myself now getting more and more aggressive with people that would hate Trump. And again, it's not that I was a Trump fan. I just didn't like the hate. So, but when I was saying these things, now it's turning into this thing that it wasn't meant to be. So my good intentions started to go, my good intentions were starting to not lead to something good.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make, and it was so much, it would be so much easier for me to sit here and just criticize. I could throw statistics at you for everything that you said, and I could sit there and try to win that. And I could, and it'd be so much easier, and people would probably like appreciate that. People that I'm talking about would be like, dude, yeah. But I'm not here for that.
No,
yeah.
Because I think this conversation's more than just fucking numbers. I think you're right. I think it has to do with people and their lives and their what it does to them. And I agree. I'm really glad that these guys brought me on and to have this conversation, because there's going to be people that see this and go, fuck this libtard. I'm telling you, because a lot of my views come out as lefty shill type nonsense, but I think freedom is one of the most important things to subscribe to. I think responsible freedom is super important. And I've been in the same boat where, I was writing fucking books with numbers. I would go in, I would detail what is my opposition going to say on an Excel doc. And then I would argue against that. And I would start getting these hate messages, and I fucking loved it, because I was like, I'm going to fucking get you. I'm like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. That to me was my ego. That was, to me, was my pride going, yes, I'm going to be right. I don't give a fuck about being caring. I don't give a fuck about actual truth. I just care about being right. So I agree.
That's like, I feel like a lot of, like, as men, like, women don't like understand, like, that we a lot of men go off of pride and ego.
100%.
Women go off of feelings, and men go off of like pride and ego. And like, so a lot of times if you don't like handle it the correct way, like that pride and ego will be your downfall.
Oh, 100%.
1,000%. And I think, honestly,
100%.
I think that's what it's doing to Christian conservatism today as a whole. I think pride's what's absolutely killing it. And I think one of the most masculine things you can do is learn that you have feelings and learn how to work through those feelings in a healthy manner. Understand that I don't need to bottle up that I get upset as a man. I need to learn how to go through my anger in a productive manner. I'm allowed to be fucking angry, but I shouldn't be fucking screaming at a guy's face at the bar because he's a fucking a Joe Biden fan. Like, that's just not how a civilized fucking person does it. And I think that's one of the biggest things that men face today is dealing with anger. And maybe that's just me personally, but
no, it is, dude.
I think working through anger in a healthy manner is difficult for a lot of men, because it's easy to just want to fucking punch through a hole in the wall. You know what I mean? I'm sure, that was me as a teenager. Yeah. That was me as a teenager, man, just fucking punching holes in my door every time I was pissed, instead of like a healthy way. Go grab a fucking punching bag. You know what I mean? Go to jiu-jitsu class.
And sit in it and realize, like, I'll tell you what, man, again, and I'll bring up what the thing that made me realize where I kind of switched off was I did it was one of my first podcasts. It was like 3 hours, and it was just me talking for like 3 hours. And I did it on pride, and it was the wrong timing, because it was during June. But I got messages from people that loved Trump telling me that, dude, I thought you liked Trump. Like, they were angry at me. I got messages from the LGBTQ community yelling at me. And I was like, hold on, I'm on to something here. Why do they all hate me?
Yeah, right.
Why is everybody mad at me right now? And it's like, because I didn't say anybody's name.
Because when you hold the mirror up, people don't necessarily like that. Introspection for fucking people is scary. To look at yourself and go, am I wrong? Am I a fucking jerk off? It makes them feel lesser because, you know, that's the ego. That's your ego hindering you from character development, from self-mastery.
But if I say I don't like Pride and I don't like MAGA or I don't like the LGBTQ community as a whole, I say that, and individuals start messaging you, I didn't say I didn't like you.
Right.
So like, what does it, I like you actually, like I know who you are and I like you and you knew me before I said that. Like why does the community hold a bigger part of you than you hold of yourself? Does that make sense? Like, why did you feel attacked when I didn't attack you?
That's a part of their identity.
I attacked this, right? The fact that this. Do you know anything about Malcolm X?
A little bit.
So I was huge into Malcolm X, dude, for what, like 2 years, dude. Like I fell in love with him. Like I read everything about him that you possibly could read about him. And the thing that really got me was when I found out that he left. What really got me involved in him in the first place is I like to look at people that have dropped their pride, that have been part of this big group, left the big group, right? And been leaders in that big group. Like I look up to people that can do that, because that's not, like I just said, I was going up a path where it was like people looked up to, and I could have just kept going with MAGA and been that guy, right? I could have done that.
Yeah.
It would have been way easier, and my ego would have been through the roof, right? I could have did that. But what happened with Malcolm X is he left the Nation of Islam because he found out Elijah Muhammad was that was who he followed. That was the leader of the Nation of Islam, had kids with underage girls that when he was married. So Malcolm X found that out and was like, hold up, dude, like this is not what you're teaching. How can you teach this? How can you teach something else and do this? So he actually left. He went to Mecca, did his whole, what do they call that? They call it something like a missionary thing for Muslims.
Like the pilgrimage type deal.
Yes. So he went there, he's like, dude, like everybody in Mecca, they were all different shades of colors and they were all getting along. What are we doing wrong here in America? So he actually came back, and that's what grabbed me there. And then he got killed. But what he did before he got killed, before his last speech, which is very hard to find, and I can send it to you, and it's in this book I have back here called The Dead Are Arising. The thing that he specified and why they wanted to kill him was because he outed Elijah Muhammad, the Nation of Islam, and the KKK. They were on the same team. So Elijah Muhammad and the leader of the KKK would plot together and say, the KKK be like, okay, how do I get my people to want to follow me? And he would send in the Nation of Islam, the people that don't mean shit to them on the bottom of the totem pole, to like beat up a white guy. Mm-hmm. So that now they're afraid, and the KKK can come in and recruit more people. And they would do the same thing with the KKK. They'd be like, all right, you go in here and hang this black guy. So now I can come in and recruit more people from the fear that he just did to his own people. He set that stuff up. So, and on top of that, the FBI was included in each group in these meetings, right? Like they were undercover, right? They're not undercover. They're in there to control, to make sure that this shit's working the correct way. Yeah. At the end of the day, man, and that's why I'm not Democrat, I'm not Republican, because I don't think it's any different. Like, look how many votes Democrats just won with this Roe v. Wade from people that would not have voted. How many more are going to vote now?
And it's crazy because, it almost seems like that was the point. So they had a reason to go, send me $9 to Nancy fucking Pelosi so you can for her campaign. It's like, this bitch is insider trading. We all fucking know it.
Yes.
It's like, absolute power. corrupts absolutely.
Yes.
And it's really commendable and probably not said to you enough to when you start getting that, oh, you're the MAGA guy. That power that comes with that, and people start looking up to you and going, wow, man, you're so smart, you talk so well. To leave that behind because you were like, this isn't who I am, this isn't doing good, this isn't, a chase for truth. That's commendable, because power, once you start getting it, and if you've never had it before, that shit's like crack. That can drive you down to do shit that you would have never ever thought of before you had it. Because power's fucking, the power and money, those are fucking the most dangerous things in the world to obtain if you've never had them. You know what I mean? So it's very commendable to be able to turn that around and go, I want to have honest conversations, no matter what the fuck that means.
Yeah, and it is, dude. It's so hard for me because people do think that like you are, and honestly, you are very articulate and well spoken. That was not me, dude. Like I'm a high school dropout. Like I am uneducated from a level of being in schools. Like we do part of this podcast is me, Eddie, and Mike. We read a book and we come on, we review the book. We try to get an author on of the book.
That's fucking awesome.
And that we're going to start doing a music one where I'm trying to incorporate what I'm talking about communities into my podcast, where the things I'm interested in are all going to be a segment of my podcast where the guest is the biggest one. And I'll talk about anything and everything, but like the segments just are going to kind of show my interests and what I'm into, so that the person that was sitting there saying I'm a piece of shit or whatever can look and be like, you know what? I do like to read too. So he does have something. I like music too. Yeah. So it's not all
you're a fucking human. You know what I mean? You have interests. You're not a fucking criminal for having conversations and sharing ideas. And that is super important today, because I think of, everybody's reactionary. We're very touchy right now as a society and as a culture in America, and delving into the arts and more of the subcultures in America, super important. I believe that 100%. We just did a podcast a couple weeks ago with my buddies who are industrial designers, right? These guys are fucking obsessed with furniture, chairs, and it was so cool to watch these guys describe why this shit's fucking cool to them, because they're like, it's art, man. It's like you sit on a chair and don't ever think about it, but like an artist had that last, and somebody who thinks and is a creative touched that last and said, this is going to be the most comfortable, this is going to be the most visually appealing, and you have to make those two things combined. I think it's really good that these guys are definitely doing books. I think that's a lost fucking art. I've written 2 books myself that were fucking terrible, but I wanted to put 100,000 words on a fucking into pages and go, I fucking made this. They were shitty, and I've learned a lot since then. But I think books are a lost art, man. I think a lot of people should really appreciate the books, because when you read a book, you are actively digesting somebody else's thoughts. Like physically, it's such a fucking cool concept to me.
Yeah, I love reading, dude, and I just got into it. I was telling him, man, before we did this book thing and I started reading until I guess the big book, which is the AA book. Before that, dude, so I'd say 6 years ago is when I started reading the big book, which took me forever because I hated sitting there reading. Before that, dude, was Holes. The book Holes. I was in third grade, dude. Only book I think I've ever read front to beginning before I read the big book. And then since then we did like 8 or 9 podcasts plus, the 10 books I read outside of that. I read more books in the past 2 years than I did my entire life. And I get my kids into it. Like we read them books just about every night, just so that they kind of get into it. And that's the point of parenting. Like you said, dude, you want to be the person you want the world to be. And the more I live out the way I would like to see the world, the more I see the world that way to begin with. The world's not going to change. It's not. Like we can sit here and wait for it to change all we want to, but it's going to be we're going to be in the same spot if we do that. You need to change. And and that's it, dude. Like my kids, I don't know about you, dude. Patrick and Liam, I think, are the same age. And your kid's the only kid I know that has a bigger head than my kid, just so you know.
Them Pollock heads, man.
That is the truth. He has a Pollock. That's funny. But Liam never does what I tell him to do. He'll never do it. He'll do the opposite every time. But
gotta learn.
if you watch him, dude, he mimics me. So like the things he does are the things I'm doing. So when I see him doing something that I don't like, I look at it like, what do I have to change in my behavior to make him not act like that? Because he's around me, he sees me, he wants to be his environment, he wants to be the things that get attention. So if I do something and he sees it gets attention, whether it's good or bad attention, that's what gets me attention. So I'm gonna do that. Right?
Yep, 100%. Come on, Moose. Sorry.
And I think all of us are the same way. I think all of us are the same way through being adults. Like we see what's getting attention right now and we jump on it. Like the abortion thing, dude. Like how many people didn't really think about that until it's all over the news and everybody's talking about it. Now it's like everybody, me, and that's including me. So, it's including me. But the point of this conversation is to be you, man. Like if this is, speak up, have a conversation, tell how you feel about it. Because I do. Like you said, reactionary. We are emotional people. Like we are emotional creatures. We like to think we're logical.
Purely, we're emotional.
But we are just emotional, and we try to use all this logic that we have, which is only our experience, and then yell at people if they don't agree.
So I feel like the difference is like you're putting in the work to educate yourself. You're looking up the cases, you're looking up RoeVWade, you're reading about these things. And a lot of other people like on social media are going based purely off of emotion and reaction and what other people have said.
Yeah.
And it's partly picking the side, and I think I touched on it earlier, was people are afraid to be wrong. They're afraid to change their mind. I am 100% confident and honest when I say I'm willing to change my mind to be pro-life if you present me with enough of a good argument. And so so far, I have not seen an argument presented well enough to where I'm willing to change my stance.
Would you say you're pro-life from a government standpoint and moral standpoint? Or I mean, a pro-choice from moral and government? Because I think that there's two different arguments there. I do. I truly believe that. I think that I am allowed to be pro-life morally and talk about why. But at the end of the day, you do what you want to do.
Yeah, I think I don't know if I would actually say I'm necessarily pro-life morally. I may believe that. I haven't thought about it enough because I could be swayed one way or the other that choice is more important than that life. You know what I haven't thought about it enough. I want to say that I'm pro-life, that morally I believe that life is important. Life is,
when I say morals, I mean you internally.
Yeah, no, and I
not telling somebody else they're immoral for doing it. That's not what I mean. I'm not telling somebody they're immoral. I'm telling myself I need to have this baby if I have a baby because I know what it'll do to me if I don't, right?
I believe in the sanctity of life, 100%. I think, and that's almost all life, and that's including animal life too. And I know most people don't want to equate, animals and people as being the same thing. And I'm not against hunting. I think that's fine. I think ending a human life in certain cases is fine. I'm for capital punishment. If you catch a serial killer who has no empathy for people, who does not fit into society, I think it's out of mercy. You know what I mean? As long as it's not done out of malice and hatred, there's times where it's appropriate. And I think a lot of people would agree with that. I think a lot of people would go, this dude, you take like Ted Bundy, you know what I mean? Like somebody who's fucking eating people. And you go, this guy doesn't fit in with society. He impedes upon the free will of others. He impedes upon the safety of others. And I think most people would agree, like it's out of mercy for society and him, because he just doesn't fit in with the world in such a dramatic way. You know what I mean? So, I do believe in the sanctity of life. I think fucking killing animals for sport's the dumbest thing in the world. I think that's crazy. Eat it. You kill it, fucking eat it. You know what I mean? So I do believe in the sanctity of life. I would say that I'm morally pro-life. If you can provide a quality of life to a child, and you should do it. But if you can't and you need that choice, you should have it.
Yeah, and that's the only thing I think is important. That's the biggest part of this, dude, is I think a lot of people that are pro-choice do have that moral compass in them, but you don't, it's hard to say it out loud because people, when you say that, think you're telling other people they're immoral. And I'm not saying anybody that my morals are superior to yours by any means. I don't believe that. I think that I have my morals and they mean something to me. So when I say morally, I'm saying, like, for me, I can't live with that decision. Like, I know that for a fact at this point. I mean, I know I can live with it, but I know that I would not want to deal with it.
And I think most people would agree that you have every right to that version of morality. And I feel like a lot of times when you talk the question of morality and it gets brought up in some sort of like religious circle, they go, well, how do you have morality without a God? And as I'm not an atheist, I would say, if anything, I'm agnostic, right? But like, after 20 years of Catholic school, one thing I can say with the utmost confidence is if you need religion to have a moral compass, you're a piece of shit, like right out of the gate. You, as an adult with a brain, with the ability to critically think and empathize with others, you should know that how to treat others. You know what I mean? Like how to treat others, how to treat yourself, how to be a respectable, dignified person. And to go, all these mothers are baby murderers. That's not true, and it's not cool. It's not cool to say that to somebody.
Do you know who feels that way? The ones that feel that way. So let them feel that way, because they have to be the ones that deal with it.
Yeah.
You aren't. You're not the one doing it. You're not like that. You're not the one doing it.
Those in glass houses, you know what I mean? Shouldn't throw stones. And
yeah, but don't you think? Would you agree with this that morals are best learned through really experience? So like I can help my kids understand things like we liked Catholics specifically. Growing up Catholic, I think we all did, dude. That's what Northeast Philly is full of Catholic schools.
Yeah,
yes, it is.
But they the way that they take Christianity is they focus on the evil, and it's like, if you do these things, you're evil, right? Like you're sinning, you're going to hell. Like that's what you're like ingrained in this, not to be evil. Like you think you're being punished 24/7.
It's very Old Testament.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of focusing on the good, it's always like
the loving aspect. You know, and I seen somebody, honestly, you know who Penn and Teller are, the magicians?
Yes.
I think it was Penn who said, morality is not, shouldn't come at fear or the threat of damnation, right? Like that's not morality. That's fear of punishment. Morality is more than that. It's to be good with, you shouldn't be threatened to be good. You should be good to be good. So I agree. It's super Old Testament. It's like, what, you know, we preach this idea of God is love, God is light, briefly, because we'll jump right over that and go into, if you're a dude and you're kissing dudes, you're going to burn in the fires of hell forever. And it's like,
if that's the reason you're not kissing dudes, it's probably a problem, right?
Yeah, right. Like, yeah.
If you're not doing it because you're afraid you're gonna burn in a fire, it's like, all right, why aren't you really not doing it?
Yeah, God doesn't sound like he's on your side. You know what I mean? Like, if you want to kiss dudes, like, I don't know. It's like, it's the same people that think being gay or trans is like a choice. Like, you can't choose today to want to suck a dick and like it. And if you think you can, I have news for you, my friend. Like, if you think you can choose to do that, it's like, you might be a little, you know what I mean? Like, and there's nothing wrong with that.
And I think it goes both ways, though, especially with kids. You can try it, but you're never going to know until you do it. Some people do, and that's the only thing I have with the trans communities. I do think I don't agree with kids doing it. I don't agree with any of the hormone changes.
You shouldn't transition at a young age.
I don't agree with it because if it's not a choice, right? So let's say it's, and I don't know, because I just know I'm me, right? I don't know what it feels like to be a man. I don't know what it feels like to be a woman. I just know what it feels like to be Bill McDale. So for
Right.
me to sit there and say I'm a woman, I'd be like, well, maybe I am, because I don't know. What does it feel like to be a woman? I don't know. What's it feel like to be a man? I don't know. Do me and you feel the same way? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe
I only know how it feels in my skin. But if I feel that way and I'm 6 years old or 7 years old, I already feel that way. Why the hell do I need drugs to make me feel different?
yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, I agree.
That's the only standpoint I have. When you're an adult, man, do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, wait till you've developed to make that choice, because
Yeah.
it's very permanent. It can be, you know, you
There's
can
no
change your
going
mind.
back.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and you know, just I understand for those people, because I you know, I've talked to trans people. I have gay friends, and I understand that, you know, you have like this sort of feeling, but as you grow up, things change, feelings change, because maybe you do feel, maybe you're a man, right? And you feel like a woman, you want to wear dresses, do the things that make you feel feminine. There's nothing wrong with that. And you might transition too early and go, I really wish I didn't do this, because I could have felt this way. I'm not, like you said, though, I'm not one to say, you know, this is what you should do. This is what a man is, or a woman is. You should do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah.
And you should be respected by doing that. As long as you're not impeding on the free will or safety of others, you have the God-given right to be who you are. And that's one of my problems with the conservative community, is them saying that they're grooming children. And I don't see it that way. I see the LGBTQ community giving kids that are gay, kids that are lesbians, spaces to come out of the closet, because otherwise, if nobody was there for them, they'd be fucking bullied out of existence until they hid in that closet, repress those emotions. And then you see these dudes that repress these gay emotions become youth pastors and absolutely abuse people behind closed doors. That's a reality for people like that. So that's just one of the problems I have with that argument, but I 100% agree. I don't know I can't tell you what being a man is. I can tell you what
I have no idea. Exactly. And that's what I try to get to people, is be you. If you want to just be a woman and consider yourself that, then so be it. But I think first and foremost, figure out who Dave is. Then the others, like, it doesn't matter. Like, that's why I don't understand the pronoun stuff, the sexual orientation stuff. Like, why does it need to have a name?
The way I see it too.
It's just me. It's like, you want to make sure that there's one other person in this world that you think feels like you. So like when you said you think people deserve respect, I think people shouldn't expect respect or care about what other people think. That's my point. I think you're better off not caring.
I think in a perfect world, you know, I think that's kind of what I mean when I say that, is like,
Yes.
In a perfect world, you deserve respect to just be who you are. Like, nobody should fucking disrespect you because of those things. And I always like to present it to people as like, you know, you guys are getting like have more heavily into books. Those people are going to have such a fucking interesting story to tell you. You know what I mean? Like, their perspective, their life, the things that they've lived, their lived experience. To me, that's fucking gold. I love hearing about people that I'll never have that experience. I will never have the experience of being gay or trans, but I want to know. I'm curious. I want to know what your life was like. I want to hear your story, because you're going to see shit that I'll never be able to see. I love perspective.
Yes. And I think it's important for people to see that communication and have that conversation, instead of just say, accept this society, accept it, because nobody understands it. Because most people that are saying those things that they're grooming don't understand it. They're not willing to have a conversation. Right. Yeah. And I'm willing, even though I might get off and be like, I disagree with everything that person just said. I think they're liars, whatever. I'm not going to sit, respect you or any of that. I'm just going to talk, have a conversation, question you, question me. I have a better understanding of who you are. And I hope that you keep living that with the goal of growth, right? Like, I think that you need to keep growing. So I hate the thing of authentic self. And I think authentic self should always be changing. I think like people say, I'm me, or be you, or you're perfect. I'll never tell my kids they're perfect, ever, because they're not. I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. Keep telling your kids that they're perfect the way they are, and they're going to see other kids doing things, and their parents are telling them they're perfect. So now you have all these different perspective of what perfect is
Yeah.
in the same classroom. And it's like, which one is perfect, right? Like, I'm not perfect. My mom said I was perfect, but they're doing this and getting treated this way. Maybe that's perfect. So maybe I'm completely the opposite. Like, we have to, I just think the emphasis on those certain human dimensions that we're doing today are wrong, right? Like, it should be more embraced on the human. Like, why doesn't anything else matter? Why doesn't eye color matter? Like, those dimensions, because they don't really matter that much. It doesn't make up who you are. Like you said, the Polak head, right?
Yeah.
I'm not proud to be Polish or Irish. I don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
My parents, and I'm grateful for whatever they went throughout history. I'm grateful for it. But for me to sit there and say, like, that's my best human dimension is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because what does that even mean?
Yeah, it's like, I'm not gonna go, like, I don't think, you know, St. Patty's Day is a fucking Irish celebration. It's a reason for us to get fucking hammered. You know what I mean? And the only thing
Irish. Like, what the fuck does that mean?
the only thing I know about my Irishness is that it gave me a bit of ginger in my beard. You know what I mean? Like,
I got a few red hairs.
yeah. So it's like, I agree.
But what is that of you? Like, what the Irish part is not much of you. It's what that character of your grandparents, your great grandfather, and all the character of them is embedded in you. Just because they lived in this spot and you drew the stick of having a penis, having white skin, doesn't mean that that's what society sees as that. Like, it's not true.
Well, I think it's like, it's hard enough to be a kid, especially in this generation growing up. Like you said, like the perfect thing, it's hard enough to like deal with, like you're learning how to deal with emotions. You're learning how to deal with your body changing and hormones, and like you're growing. It's hard enough to deal with that, and then to put these stigmas on them.
Yeah.
It's for like, I couldn't imagine having to like, because like, I mean, obviously, like, I back like high school, I've gotten so fucked up, I don't even remember what those feelings were. But I couldn't imagine like being a kid now and like having to deal with that, and having like on top of your family life, your school life, your like homework load. Like, I couldn't imagine having to deal with all this pressure, and then to get the stigma from society and your friends, and what's perfect, what's pretty, what's smart. Like, I couldn't imagine having to deal with that.
And you have the internet, so it's in your face
all the time.
You don't have to go get a book to read it. You're not just getting it at school. You're going home and reading it.
And then you got like TikTok. You got,
and like I said, man, you're
the social media.
Yeah, and how far away are those people? But in your mind,
They're right there.
Yeah.
Same thing as movies and things. We don't understand how that affects us. Movies, right? Like, as a human, before technology, the only thing you had what was real and happening in front of you.
Yeah.
Now you have this big screen with this thing happening. I guarantee our brain can't tell that that's not real. Like, it doesn't know that that's not actually happening in front of us. And it makes it look like our brain's interpreting it like it's happening, like we're there and doing these things.
So there's been studies. There's been studies that have been done, because when, you know, violent video games like GTA and all came out, parents were worried that like these kids are fucking shooting people and blowing them up constantly on this video game. They're killing cops. This has to be bad. And what they found was that it did more good than harm. It allowed kids to be able to focus on more things at once, to be able to multitask. Like the average person who doesn't play video games can like track 2 or 3 things with their eyes at once, whereas avid video game players can do it like 8 times. There was no change in like their sense of morality. They're like they like, even kids go, this is fake. There's even their subconscious. So there's been things done around that. I think there might be a bit of desensitization with possibly movies, with how graphic and gory those can end up being.
And they're real people.
Yeah, and I think there might be something for sure there. I haven't read enough on actual movies and how that affects brain development. But I would say that even that probably does more good than harm, because they did a study around books, right? More people that read books had the ability to empathize more, because they had the learned capability of perspective. Yeah, they've learned the capabilities of perceiving other perspectives, having the actual train of thought to be able to put yourself in somebody's shoes. You should check out a psychologist by the name of Howard Gardner. He's been disputed by some people, but I really enjoyed learning about him in psychology, because he has a thing called the theory of multiple intelligences. Whereas, you know how they used to track just IQ as like a gauge for how smart you are, and he's like, this only fucking talks about how logical somebody can be. That's one intelligence. So he started looking at things like kinesthetics, your body intelligence. Michael Phelps, you know, LeBron James, these guys would be considered masters of those intelligences. They have a body-brain connection unlike any other. Empathy, like introspection. I forget the antithesis of introspection, but like self-regulation, self-emotion, knowing that's an intelligence. I think lawyers actually excel in that area, and they excel in the antithesis of it as well, because they have to understand how a jury reacts to them. They can read body language really well and things like that. I think there's 8 intelligences in all. But when I started reading about that, it really changed on my perspective of how I learn, because I was like, I need to understand where this falls into in a category. It made me a better weightlifter, made me better at jiu-jitsu, because I could pull myself out of this sort of mentality of like being logical when I'm in jiu-jitsu, and I'm like, this is kinesthetic, focus on the body. And you know, I think that's an important thing too that a lot of people need to learn, is learn how you learn. How you learn. Are you a physical learner? Are you an auditorial learner? Are you do you need somebody to read it to you? Do you need to physically see it? I'm a hands-on kind of guy. I have to touch whatever it is I'm trying to learn and how to do. That's why languages for me has been so hard. I'm trying to teach myself French right now using Duolingo. It is something I lack, and I'm like, I want to fucking fill this gap in my fucking brain. I want to figure out how I can learn how to do this, and I've been doing it for 2 months, man. It's fucking brutal.
Good luck.
Yeah, his wife's Greek, right?
Yeah. So like, I know like Greek, and like she took a year of French in high school, I think. And she was like, it's so hard. There's like 10 different O's and like how to use them. She like, so good luck.
Dude, I took 6 years of Italian. I can say bike, bicicleta. That's it. That's all I got. And I honestly learned from Duolingo. Shout out to Duolingo, for real. It has taught me more French in 2 months than 6 years of Italian ever fucking did.
You
and
think
I
it's
had great
more
teachers.
because you wanted to do it? You think it's your choice? Like in school, you kind of had to do it, so it's more like, let me pass this thing, and
Maybe.
or did you want to do it then?
I mean, that's how it was for me.
In
when I went
college.
Yeah.
In college, I chose to do Italian, so I was like, I'll do Italian. You know, and I've done it before. I'd like to learn Italian. I would love to learn a Romance language so I could branch into the other two. I don't know. Maybe it's more because it's more gamified. I like, you know, the little challenges. I like, you know, the lights and flashing. Woo, you did it, kind of thing. Maybe it's I learned better through that. Maybe it is a little bit of me wanting to do it.
It's probably a little bit of both.
Like that's how it was for me. Like I went back to school and was taking like classes to get into like nursing school at one point, and I was doing it for me. Like I wanted to do it. Like so like the 12 years of school, grade school, high school, like I struggled. Like I did not want to be there. I hated every freaking second of it. And I was like, I didn't even take my SATs because I was like, I'm never going to college. Like it's just like school's just not for me. Like you, I'm a visual hands-on learner. That's how I learn. To sit there and listen to somebody talk for all day long and write stuff on a blackboard and I have to copy it. I'm not learning at all.
No, I'm just repeating and my brain's going elsewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm just doing this.
And that's what it was all the time. And so like I struggled. So then when I went back to college, like I wanted to do it. It's something that I wanted to do. It was in a field that I was interested in, and a little motivation, like because I was an adult, I'm paying for it now. It's coming out of my pocket. So It's like I want to make myself proud. I want to feel good, and I want to make my family proud and to better a life for my wife and my son.
Yeah. And that'll definitely drive you to do great things. And I think that plays a big portion into it. And, you know, I think forcing kids into going into like things just because it's like the threat of you got to go to college. You got to join it. There's both conversations being had nowadays. It's like, if you go to college, you're going to be fucked. You should join a fucking trade. And then the other argument is you're gonna have to fucking work 70 hours a week. If you don't go to college, you're not gonna get a good job. Truth be told, like not everybody's getting a good job today, right?
Yeah.
You should do what you want and find what makes you happy, because like you said, it's gonna, you know, on your own time, it's gonna make you do what you want to do. It's gonna take you farther than ever because you found what you want to do. Like I'm in tech right now, right? And I'm trying to further my career I'm self-studying how to code. I want to know, I use a fucking computer every day and I don't have the full capabilities of manipulating it. I want to know how to do that. And, you know, I really enjoyed medicine and I would love to go back. I would love to be able to code shit for biologists who are creating like 3D hearts, do something fucking amazing, cool like that, something important. So yeah, knowing what you want to do and just having interests is so important, and letting kids be free in that and giving them the option to go to college, to go into the trades and learn an actual skill is super important. People always make the argument against college, and I just wanted to say, like, you know, people shit talk like gender studies people and historians for doing that. There's no money in that. You know, you're spending $120,000. There's some people that I work with in sales that have history degrees and learn their negotiation tactics because they know of all these war generals, like the history of them and how they operated their chains of command and stuff like that, and utilize that in their everyday today. Yeah. It is never a bad thing to learn anything. And we got to stop with that rhetoric. College is bad. College learning things is you're going to be turned into a liberal shill. That drives me insane. I think education and healthcare, they're the bee's knees. Those are the foundation of a country.
I agree, man. The issue I have, so you bring up the healthcare and the college thing, is the fact that the federal government put their hands in there, because that's why it's so expensive for college, right? So like and that's why it's not as competitive in those bigger markets, or too competitive when you get out of college and you're still getting an entry-level job. It's because most people are going, but they also have how much debt, right? And that's all because the government's paying that debt. Same thing with the healthcare, dude. Same thing with the healthcare. Like, you're having a baby, right?
Yep.
Right. So can you call the hospitals and ask how much it's going to be?
They probably give me a guesstimate, which is
no, they won't tell you anything.
Yeah, they don't
have a price. Like, right? Like there's no oh, you know, this is our menu. Yeah, that's true. So it takes the competitive nature away from the medical industry, like almost altogether, because you can't call around and shop. It's like, I can do whatever I want, and then you're going to get a bill that says $1,000 for skin-to-skin contact with the baby. The fuck you charging me for skin-to-skin contact for? Like $1,000 so I can hold my baby because you let me hold my baby?
Yeah, that's fucking wild.
But everybody wants to talk about the medical insurance and how it needs to be universal. It's like, well, I think we need to start first at why is it so much? Because it's so expensive and you can't shop it. You can't do any of that.
You look at how
then you can go to insurance and taxes and say, how do we pay for it?
Look how the government insurance is done, though. Letting the insurance companies do what the fuck they're doing is insane. I have to send you the there's a document. It's kind of just like an infographic of how the American insurance companies are ran versus other first world countries, and there's like 3 check marks for the other ones. There's like 7 or 8 that go through us with the premiums we got to pay, the month over month costs, and then you get charged a deductible after you're already paying a premium, which is what the fuck how are you getting away with that? And one thing I think of when I think of medication or the medical field being thrown to the free market is people are going to need stuff. So companies unregulated and totally free are going to go, you're going to compete, but like, it's still going to be expensive. You need this. You're going to pay me a pretty fucking penny regardless for insulin. It's not going to be $25.
Oh yeah. And I don't think it should be across the board free market. I just think it needs to start the conversation of why are we allowed to charge this much?
Yeah, they need to,
like, why are you allowed to charge this much? Why are you allowed to charge for skin to skin contact? Like, why is that allowed?
Yeah.
Like that charge doesn't make any sense. Why am I paying a doctor that never walked into the room? Because it's his practice.
You can get an itemized list of the things that they charged you for.
Charged, past tense.
Yeah, charged.
There's nothing you can do after they already charged it.
Right. So I know some people use that to argue, well, you're making me pay a surplus on what this actually cost you. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people get around a lot of medical debt through that. They get an itemized list of the things that they were charged for. And on that itemized list, they argue, look how much you're upcharging me for this, 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 and this. And then instead of taking it to court, because no fucking hospital wants to go to court, they go, all right, we'll nix that, we'll nix that, we'll nix that, just pay this.
Yeah.
So that's
who's all going through that? Like, why not start there and be like, let's start there right now. Like let's not have to make people do that to get a cheaper medical bill.
It's because hospitals aren't run by doctors. They're run by fucking businessmen. And my grandfather taught me businessmen, lawyers, they're the slimiest people you meet.
Yep, and pay off all the politicians.
That'll be totally true. Dudes in suits, never trusted them. I wear a suit to work when I do go into the office sometimes, and I fucking hesitate to trust myself because that suit feels powerful. You know what I mean? So absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's fucking adage. Super important. People remember that.
It is, dude. And we've been here for a while. I don't want to hold you for too long. I guess my last thing for you, since you are pro-choice with abortion, is there anything that you're not, like, are you pro-choice for across the board for everything? Like, do you think people should have a choice in what regard? And besides just abortion? Just everything. Yeah, like for example, the big argument is you're pro-choice for, or you're pro-choice for abortion, but you weren't pro-choice for all the stuff with COVID, or you're trying to take guns 100%. Away.
No, so the COVID stuff, there should have never been mandates for making you get a vaccine or wearing a mask. That should have been handled so much better. And there could have been just better rhetorics around it. Like, I believed in wearing a mask. I got vaccinated. I got both of them. It shouldn't have been mandated. It should have been, like 9/11. When 9/11 happened, I was fucking 10 years old. But it was a moment where we experienced a tragedy and the country came together for that brief moment afterwards. And it should have been the same way. It shouldn't have been politicized. And by mandating it and shit like that, bad choice, terrible choice. And the other one was
like gun control. Do you think people should be able to own a gun?
I think everybody should be able to own a gun. I think there's things that we can do and legislation that can be passed that can make it more difficult to get guns in the hands of criminals, right? And a lot of people will always say, it takes a good guy with a gun to stop a bad guy with a gun. And I think that's just, a silly talking point, because most
who's the good guy, who's the bad guy?
Yeah, that, and most illegal guns started out as a legal weapon, right? Like, they didn't just come from fucking nowhere. And it's really nuanced, and we could do a whole talk on it, but just being willing to go, adding background checks. I don't know if regular people should be able to just sell their firearms. I'm all for mandatory, biannual, yearly training to ready up on guns. It's just something we should agree on as a society, I think, to go, if we're going to have these and do it responsibly, let's train. Let's remember what these actually mean. I don't necessarily. It's hard. It's hard to get people to budge on that because it's number 2, baby. It's the second one, right? So I would be willing, as personally, to go and do firearms training every year to make sure I get to keep the right to my guns. I don't think that's
asking much.
Yeah, well, I think they should. I think they should up the age too. Because what, 18 or something right now? Like that one kid, he literally turned 18 that had like that mass shooting, and then a week later went out and brought an assault rifle.
Yeah,
within a week of turning 18, and then went and shot up his school or whatever the hell he shot up. It's like because like at 18, I was 18. If I had a gun, I'd probably be locked up right now.
Yeah, right.
I didn't freaking get my shit together until I was 25. So at 18, I was extremely irresponsible, extremely unpredictable.
I don't think that 18 is the same.
You can't rent a car till 25, right?
Yeah.
You can't rent a car till 25.
Yeah,
your frontal lobes, your personality, your moral judgment is related to your frontal lobes. Those aren't fully developed until you're around 25, 26 as a man. And we always say 18-year-olds are adults. They're not. They're not adults. You see a 30-year-old dude fucking around with an 18-year-old girl, and you like, I think any normal person goes, that's a little fucking weird. Like she's barely not a baby anymore. You know what I mean? It's a little different as things get older, but like there's a weird transition of being a teenager into adulthood where you're like kind of a child, kind of an adult. And just because you turn 18, that's not like the line where you're an adult. You're
that's
now
why the age
granted
thing's
freedom.
tough for me,
Learn.
but that is also where I'm always like jumping back and forth the age thing, because what is the age? At 21, I wasn't fucking responsible either.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I think they should like up it a little bit, but I think also like at a certain age, like just say like between 18 and 25, like you're like he said, like mandated for yearly training, and like before you get that first gun, it should be like 2 weeks of training. Like there should be something in place to educate these people on the safety of guns, how to handle a gun, like
the seriousness of it. You know what I mean?
There's so much that goes into it. Like it's not a fucking joke.
You remember the DARE programs? You remember the DARE programs where they would show you fucking bodies? Yeah. Like I was a fucking kid. Like I've done shit, but like I still remember those. I still remember seeing people fucking bloody, the gore. And if you're willing to carry a gun, you should be willing to be reminded that this is what the fuck they do. Like, you know what I mean? Like those kids in Uvalde, like there was a little girl who couldn't be like they couldn't identify those kids, right? Like there was a little girl who had like I think she had green checkers on it, and her dad said they had to identify her by the star that she drew on those green what are they called? The old basketball shoes, you know what I'm talking about. Converse, yeah. On her Converses. You need to be reminded that that's what fucking guns can do, because people get desensitized. Like this is just a gun. This is mine. It's my God-given right. But you need to remember, this is what it's capable of. This is the horrors that these things cause. Like an AR, people are like, I shoot squirrels and raccoons with it. But really, how often? You know what I mean? You're using that in case somebody comes into your home, the government wants to fuck you up, and you need to defend yourself. So I think there needs to be some sacrifices made by, responsible gun owners. We need to be able to go, all right, I want this thing and I'm willing to change so fucking more people don't get hurt by these things.
You bring up a good point there with like experiencing stuff like that and humanizing it. What do you think? Would you be opposed, since we started this with RoeVWade, if a woman had, like, especially the late term abortions, had to get a ultrasound and hear the heartbeat and see what they were about to do before they did it?
I think that they physically go through it, right? So I like when we talked about it earlier. Those women
can't see it.
You can't see it, but at like, are you talking about late term abortions, right?
Like late term, when that baby looks like a baby, like you see the heartbeat, you see it moving its arms, and I know you've had a Patrick, so you've seen it.
Yeah, no, right? I do. I watch them come out. I watch the placenta fall, the whole shebang. I would say there that I think those women that are having late term abortions aren't waiting till 8-9 months and going, fuck it. I think those women are realistically more than likely have a baby's room set up, have clothes that they bought, diapers ready to go. And a lot of the times it wasn't just going, I can't do this. It was, this baby's missing half of his brain. This baby's doesn't have a fully functioning heart, or their mouth's not fully developed. Their life is, their quality of life could be terrible. And I know people go to like, well, what about Down syndrome kids or like highly autistic kids, nonverbal? There's a lot of people that are equipped to deal with those situations, but at the same time, I don't think every teacher should be a special ed teacher.
So those people though that have already been through it have already seen it. They've seen that. They've seen that it's a baby, because they've, you obviously, if you're having the baby, you've been to your appointments, you've seen the baby. I'm just saying, so obviously at that time, it's not like you're going to, one more time, but I'm saying like you have to have had, look, this is what you're about to do. Here's the baby. Here's the heartbeat. Are you sure you still want to go through with this?
I think they do go through with that. I think that realistically probably does happen. I think they are they're connected to the baby.
I'm sure it does happen, but there's some
I don't think it's
There's
a
a
quick
lot that
conversation.
don't.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's a quick conversation for the women about to have a
Yeah.
late term abortion where it's like, yes or no. It's like, here's the facts. Here's the reality of the situation of what you're dealing with. Are we going to go through with this?
And I guess my other thing is, why do we have like a Planned Parenthood? Like, why doesn't that stuff run through your OBGYN? Like, why do you need that?
Well, it's because it's affordable healthcare. So they don't make most of their money from abortion.
That's where the taxes,
So
your
yeah,
taxes are going to that.
by not having a universal healthcare system for downtrodden women to access, and men too, like I've used Planned Parenthood to get checked, you know, just in case. I've done biannual checkups, like just out of my own safety, a safety for my partners. Like, I feel like that was always a responsible thing. I did that since I was like 18, and I know I was with Renee since then, and we've had our ups and downs where we were apart for a couple of years when we were younger, and I was out and about doing my thing. So out of responsibility, I was like, I should get checked. So it's affordable healthcare. It's something that's accessible to people who don't have medical insurance, because not everybody does. Not every job is required to provide you with healthcare insurance. So when these women end up in these situations and they're like, I need to go get checked by somebody. I don't have a fucking GP. You know what I mean? I have to go somewhere. That's what it's really there for. It's something that's accessible to everybody. It's like a Ready clinic. You know what I mean? Like, you ever go to a Ready clinic because you got a fucking sinus infection? It's Sunday and the doctor's closed. It's like that, but for
I go to.
reproduction rights kind of thing.
Yeah, that's all I get to is those things. I just think that there's got to be
A better way.
happy median
I think it's just
for
a better way overall. I
like
agree.
if I go, like, that's the only thing I can really think of that, like, you specifically have to go to that, like, you can go somewhere for that. Like, there's no other medical thing that you have that you're going to somebody, like vaccine. There's no place that you go to specifically. I don't know. I just feel like there's somewhere you can go where your doctor's like, and you have to talk with your doctor and you decide, and that's it.
A lot of people forget too that Planned Parenthood, like, they do a lot of mammograms. They check women for breast cancer.
They do more than that too.
Because that's part of the reproductive. A lot. Just not saying that you do, but a lot of people tend to forget that that's part of the reproductive system initially, and then you go and see an oncologist. These women utilize that. Go, I have a fucking lump. That's fucking horrifying. I should go get that checked out. I don't have insurance. Planned Parenthood. What else? When they get scraped, I can't even think of the word right now.
Pap smear.
Yeah.
Pap smear. When they need shit like that, it's a lot of that too. They don't just solely provide abortions, but that's obviously the most conflating or
What they're
controversial.
known for.
That's what they're known for, and I think that's where people get the idea of everybody's killing babies, which
That's what people are out there.
In my opinion, I do think a lot of women, like, it comes from that. Like, I don't think a lot of them are medical. Anyone I know has never been a medical thing. It's always been, I don't want a baby. And that's what it is. And I'm okay with that because, again, it's not me that has to live with it. But I think more people, especially from Christians and things like that, would be more okay with a lot of it if it was you and your doctor and it wasn't talked about like that.
It was an individual liberty, and it wasn't
like if you just if you went to the doctor and told your doctor that, and your doctor be like, all right.
Yeah,
but that's not the case. It's like you have to go to this specific place almost to do it. And it's like, why are you walking in? That's why they're picketing out front of there and not hospitals.
It's because they know too that, like, they can go in there and it's a safe space for them to talk about something that intimate. You know what I mean? Like, they don't know, because there are definitely some doctors who are like, you're a monster. Would you even consider this? You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure maybe they don't have the insurance. They don't have a doctor that they trust. And they know that Planned Parenthood's a fucking safe space for them to go to and go, this is what I'm considering. Like, what should I do? And a lot of the times you walk into a Planned Parenthood, the nurses, for majority, are women. You know what I mean? They're gonna grant them the benefit of the doubt. They work there on purpose. So I think that's a lot of it. I think there is a lot of good. I actually wrote a whole paper in college about why we should defund Planned Parenthood, and didn't argue from the perspective of abortion being wrong, and arguing from the perspective of there being like 1,400 different locations for women's health, reproductive rights, like specialized OBGYNs, and then later down the road, I go, wow, that was a dumb fucking argument, because a lot of these are fucking Christian. They're not going to be able to go in there and have these conversations. A lot of them don't have insurance to go to these places. So that's where I ended up learning a lot of that and changing my belief on it. But yeah, it's complicated, man. It's not easy.
No, and I agree, dude. But I thought you brought up a good point with the gun ownership, saying you should have to experience what this is capable of, and being the same thing when it comes to abortion. Because I guarantee you walk into Planned Parenthood, you said, I want to get an abortion. They're going to, maybe give you a pregnancy test and then let you do it. And that's it. There's not going to be like a conversation had about what you're about to do. I've never been in one, but
I think there's a lot of
people that I've talked to have not. They just walked in, got the pill, and left. Or
I don't know enough like personal experience from other women. It's intimate. I don't ever talk too much about it with people. If they have that experience, I go.
Yeah, and I think another issue with it is not many people have an open mind. So the person that you're talking to is going to have a bias.
They're going to be defensive or they're going to be offensive. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So either way, I think you're kind of in trouble. But I don't know, man. I think it was a great conversation, brother. I appreciate you coming on, dude.
I appreciate you having me. Can I leave you with one book to read? If you're good. There's a trilogy. It's Red Rising. I don't know who wrote it. I forget his name.
I said Red
Rising. And not to give you too much, but there's a really cool color system of how they grade the hierarchy in society. Super action-packed, incredible fiction read, and it's a bit of a political commentary. I think you would enjoy it a lot.
I'll have to check it out. Yeah, I'm sure we'll find it. You don't really need the author. You got Google.
Do you have a song of yours that you would recommend for us possibly doing a review for?
So for By the Moon, there's two tracks. There's two tracks on the record besides Dollface, because you've already seen that one, that I would like you to listen to. I think
he hasn't yet.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but go ahead.
Dollface is fun. I think it's a fun song. One Last Call, I think, is some of our best songwriting, as well as Blame You. I think it's some of our just best songwriting, production, dynamics. I think it's very few and far between where I impress myself, and those are probably two songs where I do it. I'm like, wow, I can't believe I was part of this.
Awesome. Thank you.
We'll check them out, man.
Awesome.
Check them out. Thanks again, brother, for joining us, dude. I really appreciate the conversation, dude, your openness. And again, it's all right to disagree and have a conversation with anybody about anything.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I'll be on again. And if you ever want to talk music, talk books, I'm down.
Yeah, we'll definitely have you on again, brother.
All right.
Definitely have you on again. Have a good night, man.
All right, man.